like working with some of my clients who are dealing with their weight. It's funny how that translated, because he did it out of protection to make himself unattractive. And I noticed that some of the moms also somehow were kind of creating a protection layer, and that caused them to create the weight. And when they like sort of unlayer what it is, it's not the food or the level of exercise. It's really like it's really their way of unprotecting, like letting go of things like that. That's why I bring that up. That was funny. But he was so attractive. The angels even. And he made himself unattractive by putting on the weight. Yeah. So it wasn't really a question.
No, this is good. It's good to hear it. Yeah. Liposuction.
No.
Reverse. Should open up a little. Putting in the fat. Squirting it in.
So I guess going back to the original question that I was asking about this Brahma beings in the I forgot already if it was the 11th or the 12th realm, wherein they feel that they are all powerful, and that they feel that they created things, and things emanated from them. So in the way that they went down to earth and became human beings, it's almost like God becoming Jesus Christ. He's almost like God becoming a human being and becoming it sounds like that story, in fact, but this was written obviously hundreds of years before that happened. But God becoming man kind of reminds me of that, and also God being jealous, as written in the Bible, also reminds me of that. So we say then that in the Theravādan context, there is a God, or at least a God that others actually see, but he's actually a being that is located in the
same realm,
Brahma realm. And could it be possible that that is the God that is being referred to in most cases?
What do you think?
I think based on the descriptions and the characteristics and thinking that they're creations and that beings actually saw them as creators, then there's a good possibility that is the case. The great Brahmas in the is that the 14th realm?
Yeah.
14th realm.
Yeah, there's not just one as well. As I was pointing out, there's this Baka Brahma. There's about at least 5 or 6 very common ones, and these Mahamoggallana has very supernatural ability. He would actually travel up to them and suspend himself next to the Baka Brahma and go, "Whoa! So how did you do that?" He's not used to seeing people ascend into it and stay there. He's used to seeing them coming through and staying there and going down while he stays there. It's like someone who's the longest employee of a company sees all these people come and go, but someone else sort of rises up and stays right with them. And there's quite a lot of where the Buddha then makes them see that they're suffering from delusion if they think that they're going to remain there eternally, which is what they think. So they say no, and it explains to them that they're there by a grace, by a very highly developed paramita before, but it is finite. It's not they're not going to last forever. It's like I don't know, like a movie star who thinks they're eternal, but actually no, they might get diseased like anyone else. They're going to age. They are going to, hair's going to get grey and their teeth are going to get yellow, just the same. But it's going well for a long time, but that doesn't mean that you're eternal. I keep making these sort of like worldly analogies, but Not only that, the kind of omniscience and omnipotence, these are symptoms of like delusionary, psychopathic, narcissistic kind of thinking.
But do they really have certain powers then that they could use to influence the world?
Yes. Yeah, but they use them with rage, and they use them with jealousy, because not only do they have delusion, they have great power, but they have great delusion. They also have stormy emotions as well, and they're quite fallible, and their wisdom is often flawed as well. So
then it explains how gods really, get people to fight wars for them.
Yeah, and you get these deluded superpowers. Head of generals, heads of army. They act like they think they're all powerful, omnipotent. They're not. They're flawed, and they're moody, and they're biased, and they have ego. And George Bush, all those kind of people. Or Hitler. They really think their reign is going to be for 1,000 years, 4 years actually, and then they tumble down through all of the deluded actions that they do and the consequences of it. But all people like that, those kind of deluded dictators and people who stand, they're parallel, but those are humans. Much worse with these lot. Yeah, much worse.
And it says here the first jhana, highest degree. So does that mean a person who has done first jhana, even just the first jhana of the highest degree, can actually see that realm?
They can be reborn into it. Those, when they're talking about realms externally like that, kind of like they're doing there, those are rebirth in. So if you practice first jhana every day, probably someone who prays every day. Yeah? So if you pray, you likely get jhana. If you imagine the Buddha, if you imagine Jesus, if you imagine anyone else like that, and you concentrate with full force every day, 5 times a day, you're likely to be getting first jhana quite regularly. And the Buddha said that as well. When people try to dismiss other religions, he said, no, you can't, because I've seen them being reborn as devas. I've seen them being reborn in Brahma realms. So it's not like they're non-effective.
Mm-hmm. So a devoted Christian, for example.
Second, third, fourth. Devas of streaming radiance, they would get reborn in those kind of realms, or unbounded radiance, and higher as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That doesn't mean that you have to be a Theravada to be able to be born into those realms.
This is talking about the consequence of action. So if you do anything long enough, if you do yoga long enough, you get reborn in these. That's why some of those views, like everything is one and unity, or a lot of the views that come from the Hindu, the Vedic ones that were there before. Provided if you only do that, if you only do sila and samadhi, if you just do charitable action, wholesome morality, and prayer, or something like prayer, like that, you go reborn there. But if you do the other things like killing out of just war, or animal sacrifice, like some of those Vedic ones did, and so on, if you do something that actually is immoral and has immoral consequence, then you have a mixed karma. Periods in hell and periods in heaven.
So the only difference, I guess, is the attainment of arahantship.
Yeah. But none of the other schools teach the path to Nirvana. Because you have to set up, you can only attain Nirvana through preparing the consequence, the right conditions for it. And you can't do that through prayer or charity or so on, those kind of things. Through prayer and any of those kind of things, extreme willpower, or submission or salvation doctrine, all those kind of things, you can only go up into the heavenly realms. That's what they say. That's what they promise.
And I think even if you read the Bible, it doesn't really promise arahantship anyway. It just promises heavenly realms.
No, it doesn't. It also says that the topmost thing, the most powerful thing, still has jealousy.
Yeah.
So and the Buddha is saying that's still an unwholesome condition.
So it's actually quite, the biblical accounts are actually quite consistent with this.
Yeah.
If you really know the biblical accounts, it's quite...
But what the Buddha is saying is that he could recall prior to the universe's formation. That's the difference. Is that the Bible starts from the universe being created, and then all the beings travelling on the water and all that sort of stuff like that. But the Buddha was talking about, it's basically saying that every universe cycle is in its current state. If you go back, there was a period where it was in decay, chaos and everything, and then you keep going, and then it was priorly formed then, and before that it was chaotic, and then it was formed and chaotic. That this is a repeating cycle, not a one-off. So and he's saying that these beings out that during that chaos time, when it goes into chaos, they go into this realm of light. But when that realm of light, the time passes, they start falling out, and they start falling out. And that's because of what they perceive during that time that it all starts. The beliefs and the views and everything, and everything from the fact that they want to be reunited as one. So that's that Abhasya realm, that radiant realm, the great realm of streaming radiance. So they're basically reborn in that kind of second.
And it's so interesting because it just goes to show that there's, everything or a lot of the things or most of the things written in the Bible are actually quite consistent with others, except that it just looks at a smaller segment.
Yeah, this is what actually most of the Theravada teachers say. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just a partial teaching.
Yeah, it just looks at the focused area.
Yeah, but they say that that's everything there is, and the Buddha's saying no, there's more.
There's more.
Yeah, that's what he describes his teaching as an elephant's footprint, that all the other footprints can fit within it. That's what he decides. He says that this is absolutely encompasses all the things like that.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it because it looks at a certain segment in history, whereas I guess the Buddha actually saw before that and saw after that, so even beyond that, because it talks about heaven, for example, angels, which is quite consistent with all of this.
Well, not in popular culture, you tend to get the idea that there's only two things going on. Certainly in the West, you get that there's kind of religion with soul, and that you get sort of annihilationism, like materialism, as if there's only two things: you either believe in God or you don't, as if these are the kind of only two views going on. And the Buddha's saying no, there's quite a few more than that, but not just this or this. So if you say like, well, I don't believe in God, what does that mean? Well, it's not that we don't believe in God. It's like, no, recognise the existence of God and angels and rebirth in heavens and so on. So it just goes a bit more than this simplistic you do or you don't.
Yeah. Because there is a God, except that he's in the 14th realm, right?
with seven others. Yeah, there's not only just one realm. It's like a realm made up of many different.
And there's actually gods, even plural.
Many
just so happen that they're not seeing each other.
Yeah, and many of them think they're the only one. That's the thing. The Buddha would go from one to another. They all think they're the only one, and they've all got their retinue that dwell under it. So. It rings true, doesn't it? So Alright, so let's have a look at the Kasina images. Should we start again so that one becomes like a complete recording? Okay.